In the streets of 19th century London, something shocking happened. A disturbing scene unfolded: a row of bodies, victims of a deadly disease, laid out for everyone to see. Why were these bodies displayed? How did the City of London deal with the fear, pain, and loss during one of its darkest times? Join us today as we uncover the tragic truth behind the disease victims displayed in the streets of Victorian London. London in the 1800s was a city of extreme contrasts. On one side, you had the growing wealth brought on by the Industrial Revolution, with grand buildings and luxury for the elite. On the other, the poor lived in squalid, overcrowded conditions. The streets were packed with people, and filth and disease filled the air. For the working class, life was a constant struggle. Overpopulation meant that families lived in cramped conditions, often in houses shared by multiple families. Without proper sanitation, disease spread like wildfire. Cholera, typhus, and smallpox claimed countless lives, leaving death in their wake. The streets were dirty, and the air was thick with the stench of decay, making survival a daily battle. As the Industrial Revolution swept through London, it also brought with it something far darker: disease. One of the most terrifying epidemics was cholera, a deadly disease that took hold in the city with no mercy. People who contracted it experienced violent diarrhea, vomiting, and severe dehydration, leading to death within hours. It spread quickly, and in a city already struggling with poor sanitation, it took hold with devastating speed. By the 1830s, cholera had become a familiar, deadly force in London. The disease claimed thousands of lives every year. As the death toll climbed, the people of London were desperate for answers, desperate for something to explain why so many were dying so quickly. Yet, the cause of cholera remained a mystery, and with no understanding of how diseases spread, the city was left vulnerable. In the midst of all this suffering, something truly shocking occurred. The bodies of cholera victims were displayed in public. The idea was to shock the people into realizing the severity of the epidemic. The government and medical professionals hoped that by laying the bodies out in the streets, it would open people's eyes to the horrible reality of the disease. It was an attempt to wake up the city to the danger they were living in. In one of the most disturbing moments of the outbreak, bodies were not just buried, they were paraded through the streets, forcing the people to face the horrors of the disease. Some believed this was a necessary shock, a way to force the public to confront the crisis head-on, but to others it felt like a dehumanizing act, reducing victims to symbols rather than recognizing them as people. In this haunting image, one body is singled out, marked with an arrow. But why? What was the significance of this particular victim? Was it the body of a prominent figure, someone the community knew and cared for, or was it a random selection? Among the dead, while we may never know the true reason behind the arrow marking this particular body, it symbolizes a deeper question. Was this person special? Or was it a way to show the intensity and devastation of the cholera outbreak? The arrowed body could have been placed there as a singular, stark reminder that no one was safe from the disease, regardless of their status. What's clear is that, in this moment, the bodies on display were not just victims, they were emblems of something bigger. The City of London was struggling with its identity, its health system, and its people's vulnerability. This image, with the arrowed body, asks us to reflect on the humanity behind these deaths, challenging us to see them as individuals, not just numbers in an epidemic. In Victorian London, death wasn't something people talked about openly. It was a silent terror, something that lingered in the streets and homes of the poor. But for the wealthier classes, life went on as usual, and disease was often blamed on the poor. The belief that cholera was a form of punishment for their filthy living conditions persisted for a long time. But not everyone agreed. Some doctors, like John Snow, rejected this belief. Snow had an idea that would later change everything. He believed that cholera wasn't spread through bad air or bad blood, but through contaminated water. His groundbreaking work eventually led to the discovery of germ theory, completely changing how society understood diseases. Despite this knowledge, during the worst of the outbreaks, the response was slow. The poor were blamed, and the wealthy stayed far from the danger. It wasn't until Snow and others helped pave the way for sanitation reforms that things began to change. The public display of bodies, as disturbing as it was, pushed the need for action, forcing both the government and the public to finally face the consequences of the city's neglect. The cholera epidemics in Victorian London marked a turning point in how we understood disease and public health. Although the tragedy left thousands dead, it also sparked some of the most important changes in public health history. The suffering and fear of the outbreaks pushed the city to finally invest in sanitation, clean water systems, and waste management. Before these reforms, London's streets were filled with sewage, and people had little to no access to clean water. The bodies on display, the public suffering, and the widespread panic pushed officials to take action. As a result, London's clean water systems began to develop, and the city moved toward a more modern approach to disease control. These advancements weren't just local. What happened in London shaped public health policies across the world. Cities began to understand that clean water and proper waste disposal were essential for keeping their populations safe. And so, the fight against cholera led to long-term change in how we protect ourselves from diseases. The changes in London didn't stop with the end of the cholera outbreaks. The reforms which were born out of those terrible years laid the foundation for the public health systems we rely on today. It wasn't just a local crisis, it had a global impact. Around the world, other cities started to take note of London's response. They began investing in sanitation, water treatment, and disease prevention. The legacy of these reforms saved millions of lives as modern medicine began to understand the true causes of disease and how to stop it. The cholera epidemics may have devastated the people of Victorian London, but their suffering paved the way for a better, healthier world. Today, the improvements made in response to these crises continue to protect millions across the globe. It's a powerful reminder that out of the worst tragedies can come the greatest advances in science and medicine. The public display of bodies, though chilling, played a crucial role in raising awareness about the devastating power of cholera. It forced the people of London and, eventually the world, to face the harsh reality of disease and take action. These public health crises brought suffering, but they also sparked the changes that would later save millions of lives. The lives lost to cholera were not in vain. They left behind a legacy of change, a commitment to ensuring that no more lives would be lost to preventable diseases. Today, modern sanitation, disease prevention, and clean water systems protect us from the very same fate. The lessons learned from these epidemics continue to save lives, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a better future. If this video gave you a new perspective on how far we've come in terms of public health, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking historical stories. What do you think about the public health responses during the cholera outbreaks? Were the public displays effective or cruel? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below.